Today on JetCast, I'm interviewing Connor Hughes of SNY. We're going to talk about Haason Reddick, we're going to talk about Aaron Rodgers, and all the storylines as the team exits minicamp. Let's get into it. Welcome to another episode of JetCast. As always, I'm your host, Pat, and today, SNY reporter Connor Hughes. Connor, how you doing?
I'm doing well, man. How are you?
I'm good. So I just want to get right into it. Where's Reddick? Did he tell the Jets he was going to be there? Where was the breakdown in communication? I don't understand it. There's a lot of holes here that I'm not getting.
Yeah. So here's the thing. So the Jets and Joe Douglas kind of alluded to this at the NFL draft when we asked him, and it's always the most useful thing because a lot of times every GM will say, yeah, we're always exploring everything, and it makes a headline and it's the easiest thing to write about. So the Jets finish up the NFL draft. That's usually like when the final wave of free agency begins. We're like, hey, you're going to go out there and target anyone because like every stage after the draft, there's usually some notable names out there in free agency. And Joe was very honest in saying like, yeah, we're going to, again, the cliche GM answer, we're always going to look to improve the roster in any way that we can. But we really don't have that much in the budget. Basically, the cash, not the salary cap, the cash that the Jets were allotted to spend this offseason, they had spent it and they really didn't have that much more. So podcast, we can talk a little bit more in detail about this. But basically, and I don't, if I'm mansplaining or anything like that, you guys can shut me up. But essentially, you have two different forms of the salary cap. You have the actual cap that everyone can finagle and maneuver. You saw the Saints do it for years. The Eagles do it all the time. That's where they say the cap isn't real. The real aspect, though, is the cash flow aspect of it. So, for example, if the Jets are $5 million over the salary cap and they want to get to $10 million under it, they would go ahead and convert somebody's base salary to a signing bonus. It spaces out that cap hit. When you convert the base salary to signing bonus, you have to then give the player that cash up front. So every year, Woody Johnson sits down with Joe Douglas, Robert Saleh, yada, 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 and says, here's how much cash you have to spend in the offseason. With all of the moves that the Jets made, they're pretty much out of that cash. If you remember, shortly after the draft, the trade for Haason Reddick happened. The Jets were never planning on giving him a massive 4 or 5 year contract extension, paying him $25 to $28 million annually, even though he is deserving of that because of the successes that he has had as an NFL pass rusher over the last 4 years. That's one of the reasons, though, that the Jets weren't willing to give him this new contract, and no one else was willing to give Reddick a new contract at this point in time, which is why they were able to get him for basically a nothing pick 2 years down the line. Not next year, literally 2 years down the line. Where there has been a breakdown is that when the Jets let Reddick know, we will adjust your contract. By adjust, I mean they can convert some of his unguaranteed salary to guaranteed, so he's not basically someone they can just cut whenever they want. They were willing to add it in incentives, sack incentives, things like that. So if he performs on the field, he'll get paid additionally, similar to what they did with Tyron Smith's contract. When Reddick showed up for the team's physical, to take the physical and complete the trade, I talked to multiple people in the building who spoke to Reddick, who said that he assured them that he was going to be there for OTAs, minicamp, and training camp. He was going to play out this contract. They were going to work out the adjustments that they needed to work out. He was going to have a hell of a year, and then he was going to cash in free agency, likely with another team. But the Jets were still going to get 1 year of double-digit sack Reddick, and then he was probably going to go get $28 million from somebody else. At some point between when he left from taking his physical to when the Jets began their offseason program, somebody got in his ear. That's what I was told. Was somebody started talking to him, convinced him that, you know what, you have the leverage now. Huff is gone. The Jets need to pay you. Don't go to anything until they give you a new contract. From the sources that I touched base with, the only thing that the Jets are willing to do is that contract adjustment. They are not willing right now to give him a mega money contract extension worth $25, $28, $26 million a year. That's what I was told when minicamp started and Reddick wasn't there. And from all indications I've been giving is that hasn't changed. Again, they will adjust his current contract, but they're not going to rip up this new contract and give him something worth $25, $26 million a year. And unfortunately, there was a disconnect. Now, what I will say is that everybody that I've talked to inside the Jets building, coach, the staff, upper management, none of them are overly concerned that this is something where Reddick's going to hold out into the regular season, because unlike the offseason voluntary portion of the program where you can't get fined, or the mandatory minicamp where you can get fined, but it's really not all that much, training camp, it's an unwaivable, hefty charge. So at some point he's going to show up, because it just doesn't make financial sense for him to sit out of training camp.
I think it makes sense for the team too, because it really depends on what Will McDonald turns into, right? On whether or not they're going to pay Reddick, right? If Will McDonald goes out there and he balls out, then all of a sudden you have a little bit of a surplus there at the edge position, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, I think what's unique about the pass rushing situation right now is that they're not. They have options there. Like, I think they were probably a little bit deeper last year, not necessarily as deep this year, depending on what you want to say, because they lost JFM, who was a very valuable piece. I think you're going to see Jermaine Johnson play some inside, but still, like what Frank Lemires did, he was never going to be a guy that was going to get 13 sacks a year, but he was an invaluable piece to that defense. He did things that other people couldn't. He was a weapon. And he opened up things for other guys. They're hoping Will McDonald takes the next step. They're hoping Reddick is the guy that's been such a ferocious pass rusher the last couple of years. So the pass rush should be good, but they are now kind of relying on Reddick or Will McDonald taking the next step. One of those two things needs to happen. And obviously, if everybody's here and on board, that pass rush looks quite good.
Aaron Rodgers was not there at minicamp. To me, it's kind of a non-story because he was there throughout the entire offseason, the voluntary stuff. Did he told the Jets beforehand he was not going to be there, correct?
Yeah, so I I guess it was radio earlier this week. I did something earlier this week. I can't remember what it was. And somebody asked me, like, was it a distraction? And the way that I word it was newsworthy. Like, so there's two separate things. It was absolutely a news story because you have a starting quarterback in the NFL skipping mandatory minicamp. That is newsworthy. Like, it's probably a news story that the Jets should have gotten out in front of when they knew that this was something that he was going to do, because as soon as the minicamp
Saleh did him
no
favors. Saleh did him no favors at the podium either.
No.
So
no, he really didn't. So there was no favors done there by Robert, and if anything, I think it probably fanned the flames rather than dampen them. But the Jets, like, if they got out in front of it's one thing. Either way, it was going to be a news story. My thing is that news story is you have a extremely polarizing quarterback in Aaron Rodgers, where anything he does becomes a news story. Everything he does is news. You have a team in the Jets in Manhattan, in New York, that is going to be a news story because it is the Jets. And unfortunately, they don't have the history to fall back on and be like, oh, don't worry, it's just going to work out. It's no big deal. Unfortunately, the Jets' history is the flip side of that coin, where it's probably going to be something that doesn't work out. So people like to poke fun. And until they start consistently winning games, that's going to be the case. While newsworthy, though, this is not a distraction. I mean, I talked to almost a half dozen players. Not one of them, and guys I trust, like, not guys that are going to blow smoke up my ass, like guys that shoot me straight. No issue. I talk to coaches that shoot me straight. There's coaches in there that feed me the company line. There's other ones that I truly do trust. No issue. I talk to upper management, and one of the quotes that I got was that, Connor, do we wish he was here? Absolutely we wish everyone was here. Is him missing 2 days of mandatory minicamp going to impact anything that we do or do not accomplish this coming season? Absolutely not. If the Jets make a playoffs and a Super Bowl run this year, it's not going to have anything to do with minicamp. If the Jets miss the playoffs, it's going to have nothing to do with Aaron Rodgers missing minicamp. So newsworthy, yes. Distraction, absolutely not. Unfortunately, though, it's just a storyline that, while it was always going to be a story, I don't think it necessarily had to be to this level of a story. Had the Jets gotten out in front of it, maybe when OTAs began and they talked so glowingly about how Rodgers is here and everything that he means, and basically be like, look, he's not going to be here for minicamp. We already know. He let us know really early on, as opposed to just dropping the truth bomb when we asked about Reddick there to begin minicamp.
I don't get a lot of the Aaron Rodgers hate, especially from Jet fans, because from day one that he got here, from my perspective, he's done everything he's supposed to do and everything correct. Obviously, the injury is not his fault, but everything he's done has been, even at the first press conference, he never said that the Jets are XYZ. He said, we are XYZ. He put himself he ingrained himself, I feel like, with the organization, and I don't understand it. I don't understand how people could hate on him so much outside of bringing his personal beliefs onto the football field.
That's what it is. That's
Yeah.
that's really what it is that all of the anger and the animosity and the hate for Aaron Rodgers, none of it centers around the football field. He just
Yep.
has some very strong beliefs about some very divisive topics.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that whether it's politically, whether it's the vaccine, whether it's some of the stances he's taken on other topics, it's not topics like, hey, my favorite color is red, your favorite color is blue, let's debate it. Like
Yeah.
it is a they're hot button issues. They're hot button
Mm-hmm.
issues that when we start having presidential debates, the two candidates are going to be up there debating. You know, it's
Yep.
something that very much is divided if we are as a country. And again, I don't go into politics. It's not my thing. But as divided as we are, some of the things that he's taken stances are what people are divided on. And the one thing that I always say this about Aaron and getting a chance to know him over the last year and a half or so that surprised me a lot is that I had an opinion on him when he arrived in New York. And that opinion was very much one that I think was shared by the masses. And that's that this guy is a crazy person. Like that was my stance on him. Getting to know him, getting to talk to him, having deep conversations with him, it's become very clear that Aaron's whole thing is like, yeah, he believes these things. This isn't fake. He's not blowing smoke. Like this is legitimate. Like when he made that comment about seeing the alien on Hard Knocks, like that's legit. Like he believes in that stuff. Like he is very set in his beliefs regarding the vaccine. He's very set in his beliefs in certain political values and things of that nature. But his thing is that this is not you draw your sword, I'll draw my sword, and we're going to fight to the death over this. His thing, and what I appreciate most about him, what I appreciated learning most about him, is that he just wants to have a conversation. And unfortunately, so many people just immediately go and attack and immediately bring up arms and immediately want to just destroy this guy because he sits on a side of the fence that maybe they don't necessarily. But if they went with their beliefs and Aaron went with his, there's no MFing, there's no screaming, there's no yelling. It's just tell me why you feel the way you feel. I'll tell you why I feel the way I feel. And then we'll have a bourbon and we'll smoke a cigar. Like that's his stance. And I think that's what I've gained an appreciation for him because I don't necessarily know how I would handle being attacked the way that he has been attacked when he hasn't necessarily gone on the offensive of too many people. And I shouldn't say too many people. I mean, there have been situations, whether it was the Kimmel issue or all that other stuff, where he did go, we're going. And it was because, again, he felt like he was attacked previously. But when it comes to a lot of his beliefs, it's very much like, let's just talk about it. Like, let's have the conversation. And unfortunately, too many people, I think, in this world are just not willing to have that conversation. They just want to fight all the time.
So let's switch it up a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about the rookies.
Yeah.
What is your first opinion when you saw Olu Fashanu on the screen for the 11th, during the draft at the 11th pick? What was your first thought? Because a lot of social media, a lot of Twitter wanted Bowers at that point. So what's your opinion?
My opinion was that's the smartest thing that this organization could have ever done. That was telling me that Joe Douglas is in control of the draft and of the draft room and of this organization. And the rumor or the talk of somebody else running the show, it's not totally true. If the Jets stay healthy, they have a roster that can compete with any team in the AFC. That's a fact. My concerns and my questions, if the Jets are healthy, there is not a single player or position that I'm worried about. It would be on the coaching staff and on the offensive side there with Nathaniel Hackett. I have no issues with anything else. I think the Jets are borderline loaded if they stay healthy. The problem is that, and I've gotten into arguments with this with some people over at the Jets, is that they'll say, well, Connor, that's everybody. Everybody has to stay healthy. Everybody has to stay healthy. 100% accurate. Everybody does have to stay healthy. Usually, yes. But here's the thing is that the Jets aren't the Eagles who are hoping Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith stay healthy, or the San Francisco 49ers. The players that the Jets are relying or hoping stay healthy are players that historically don't stay healthy. They sign a bunch of guys that are injury prone, whether it's Mike Williams, Tyron Smith, Morgan Moses, historically not injury prone, but he is 33 years old and coming off a shoulder injury. That's usually a sign of things to come. Dwayne Brown, the definition of health during the large portions of his career, got older, injury bug kicked in, was injury riddled his first couple of years there with the Jets. So that is a concern of mine. If they lose Tyron Smith or Morgan Moses or both, which is a realistic possibility, they were turning to Carter Warren and Max Mitchell. I think if you have to go to Carter Warner or Max Mitchell in a pinch, if you have to start them for a game, you're fine. You can shade someone over there. You can chip the tight end. You can chip the running back. You'll be fine. If they have to
Brock
start,
Bowers can't get open if he's chipping an edge.
correct,
every play.
exactly. If those guys have to start 5 or 6 games, and then maybe a guard goes down, you're running into an issue here where I don't necessarily know if you're going to be much better than you were last year. And the things that derailed the Jets last year, aside from Aaron going down, might very well rear their ugly head again. And remember, Aaron is also a 41-year-old quarterback coming off a torn or ruptured Achilles and also had an injury issues with his thumb his final year in Green Bay. He's getting older. He can't take the hits he used to take either. By having Fashanu there, you now have a player where if something happens to Tyron Smith and Morgan Moses, because inevitably, statistically, that is going to happen at some point this year, you now have a top-tier talent that can go and fill it. You don't have Max Mitchell, who, again, love the guy, but again, there is a difference between Fashanu and Max Mitchell. There's a difference between Fashanu and Carter Warren. Like, there is a legitimate difference between those caliber of players where now, yeah, technically, in the perfect world, he does not play a single offensive snap this year, or except for maybe jumbo packages. That's the perfect situation for him this year. However, you now have, if the inevitable unperfect situation that seems to happen to the Jets quite often happens, you have someone, boom, they can immediately fill in, and you kind of like your options, whether it's left tackle, right tackle with him in there.
Yeah, the easiest path to success this year is keeping Aaron upright.
Yeah.
End of story.
And the other thing, too, you mentioned Bowers. Like, I think he was an option for the Jets if Fashanu was gone and they had to trade back and things like that.
Yeah.
With that said, I do believe that their tight end room's pretty decent. Like, Tyler Conklin, I feel so bad that we all talk about Garrett and the quarterbacks that Garrett's had to deal with. Conklin's had to deal with the same damn ones. So, what he did last year, career highs in receptions and yards, if I'm not mistaken. I know there are no touchdowns. That's a legitimate accomplishment considering
a lot of that underneath work in front of the linebackers is really underrated, I feel like.
And I think it's a hell of a catch deep down the seam where you saw he can do that too.
Yeah.
Like, he can go, and if you watch some of the Viking highlights,
Rucker too.
He can go down.
Rucker too at the Kansas City game.
Yeah. And Rucker, the big one about Rucker is this is the year where his scouting report on the Jets, the one thing that they specified in their report on him was that they felt year 1, really not going to play that much. Year 2, going to start making some strides. He's going to start working him in there. Year 3, we believe he can be our starting tight end. It's now year 3 for Rucker. He's got to show it in camp and the preseason and then the regular season. They still have Conklin, who they're not just going to kick to the side. But Rucker is somebody that they believe has legitimate starting potential to be their every down number 1 tight end. I don't think he's ever going to be Travis Kelce, but he can be a guy that gets you 600, maybe 700 yards a year at the tight end, which, again, if you have good receivers outside, you'll take that. Not everyone's going to have George Kittle, Kelce, who's the dude who played for the Eagles forever, I'm forgetting his name. He went to the Cardinals. Zach Ertz.
Yeah.
Not everyone's going to have that. So you have to be able to have the other guys there. And I think that second tier of tight ends is someone you could eventually see Ruckert being in. But if not, Conklin's also a pretty damn good player. And he has a hell of a chemistry with Rodgers that I think if Rodgers stays healthy, you're going to see Conklin have a really, really good year.
How do you see the running back room shaping out, especially with Braylon Allen seeming like he's having a really good OTA and mini camp right now? Is he the odd man out at this point?
I think so. Yeah, because even Davis is getting reps over him, and Tariq Cohen was repping over him in camp too, and we all obviously know what Breece Hall is. So, yeah, I think probably. I think he's probably the odd man out. And I don't think he's going to be – maybe some other team claims him. The Jets would probably like to stash him on the practice squad. But Braylon Allen, what stunned me about him is, again, it's OTAs and minicamp. You really can't take anything out of the run game because nobody can hit each other. But the differences that he's made as a receiver out of the backfield has really, really impressed me. And it's somebody that I think can be a really good complement to Breece Hall. Breece Hall's still going to be your workhorse. Yeah. He's still going to be the guy that the Jets try to feed the ball to the most. But having Allen as that complement, I think he can be – they really haven't had a compliment to him since, because Dalvin Cook was a disaster and Michael Carter just really never developed after that promising rookie year. So Allen, I think, is somebody that can really step up, and I think you'll see him step up. Don't sleep on Davis. He's somebody I was like, why did they draft this guy? He worked in pretty well and had some flashes as well in camp.
I think the offense certainly, at least in this draft, they showed that they wanted to get bigger, I think, and
Yes.
stronger,
Yes.
especially at the running back position. And the last rookie I want to talk about is Stiggers.
Yes. Hmm.
Um, he do they see him as a future starter potentially?
Yeah, I mean, look, where they drafted him, it's a little like mini lottery ticket. So like it's a scratch off. Like, yeah, you hope you're
Yeah,
winning $500, but you're probably not going to. Uh, Ulbrich, I know, loves him. I know there are several other defensive coaches I've touched base with who absolutely love him, and in their opinion, like when I talked about, I didn't know anything about him coming out of the
yeah,
draft.
no
Like
one did.
I didn't
Yeah,
study CFL tape to know. I didn't even know you could draft CFL players. So when I saw Canada, I was like, how does that make sense? I thought it was gonna be like another Nathan Shepard thing, but he was somebody that the one line I got from somebody that stood out to me was there is no way that he will fail. Now he might not be like a number one corner, he might not be a number two corner, but he's not going to wash out of the league. At the minimum, he's going to be a special teams staple for somebody. But I don't think he's going to be like a starter this year. Like the Jets have their three guys, Sauce, DJ, and Michael. But if Stiggers develops a little bit here in camp, and if he progresses some and really starts to show that promise, the Jets have some decisions coming up here they're going to have to make regarding paying people, and they're not going to be able to pay everyone. You can't pay Sauce, Michael, and DJ, Jermaine, and oh, by the way, you're also going to have to figure out what you're doing at running back, receiver, and some of those other guys that need contracts. The two
yeah,
tackles, they're both on one-year deals. Like there's things they're going to have to pay people. DJ is a guy that is going to get paid on the open market. It wouldn't surprise me if Stiggers makes some strides and develops if the Jets say, okay, we can let DJ go, save some money, really save some money considering the contract that he's under, use him for a couple of years. We can always, because Sauce is who he is. If Sauce shows an ability this year to travel on an island, and which is what the Jets are going to let him do more, if he can do that, it opens them up so much more, because now if you have Stiggers on the outside, even if he's not an above average, even if he's just an average corner, you can shade help his way because you know Sauce is fine on the other side. So that's something he's a player that I'm very, very interested in seeing. It's hard in training camp because we don't
yeah.
have, as reporters, we don't have access to replay. So it's not like I can go back and watch the all 22 and see how it works. But once preseason rolls around and he starts getting a lot of reps, I'm looking forward to watching him play and then checking back in with coaches just to see if he's really taking those steps and if he is somebody that looks like maybe in 2025 he could be a starter outside Sauce.
Do you agree with Florio putting the Jets at 25 in the power rankings? I see the eye roll.
Yeah,
I don't understand
no.
it. I think it's just a lot of these power rankings, a lot of these guys that put these lists together, I think take a lot of the history of the Jets and apply it to what's happening right now, and don't really take an objective look at what this team is right now.
Yeah. So Ryan Dunleavy, who covers the Giants and Jets for the New York Post, he and I were talking at a Giants OTA practice this year, and we
Mm,
were just going over the rosters because I don't think the Giants are going to be very good this year. And you can make the argument that there are 8 to 9 legitimate All-Pro candidates on the Jets roster. Whether it's on the offensive line where you have, and you can even expand it further to Pro Bowler, because you have on the offensive line, you have Tyron Smith and Morgan Moses. The Jets believe Elijah Vera-Tucker is that high. At running back, you obviously know what you have in Breece Hall. You have a 4-time MVP at quarterback. You have Garrett Wilson at receiver, who can be an All-Pro. On the other side of the defense, you have Quinnen Williams, who is an All-Pro. You have Haason Reddick, who is a Pro Bowler. You have Jermaine Johnson, who is a Pro Bowler. You have Quincy Williams and CJ Mosley, both of whom are All-Pros. Sauce Gardner is an All-Pro. DJ Reed is a borderline Pro Bowler. The only place where you have a quote-unquote weakness is safety, but the weaknesses at safety are kind of irrelevant because you have the arguable, I would say undeniably, the top cornerbacking trio in the NFL with Carter, Reed, and Gardner.
yeah.
I don't know how you look at that and you say 25th. If you want to say 10, all right, because then I think you're taking into consideration maybe guys get hurt. That's a possibility. The quarterback, or not the quarterback, I'm sorry, the coaching staff hasn't shown it yet. We haven't seen it. We haven't seen tangible proof that Robert Saleh is a top 10 head coach in the NFL. We haven't seen tangible proof that Nathaniel Hackett can do it anymore. You know what I mean? We've seen the defense is good, but the offense still needs to put up some points, and we haven't seen that. To put them at 25, I mean, again, I don't pay attention to any of that stuff, but when I saw that come across social media, that one blew my mind a little bit. And a big reason for it is just like, I don't know how you look at that roster and you find 24 teams that are better. I don't know how you look at that roster and honestly find 7 or 8 teams that are better. Like, I think the Jets are that talented on paper. They have to stay healthy, but the talent is there. And that, to me, I just read it as somebody who just hates certain people within that building and hates certain people, and it just has a bone to pick.
Has Woody Johnson given a playoff mandate?
No, he never will. But I mean, if they don't make the playoffs, they're going to get fired. Everyone's getting fired. So I mean, it's irrelevant. Like, whether he comes out and says you have to make the playoffs or you're getting fired. I mean, I remember, what was it?
We kind of know that anyway.
Yeah,
in all the back of our
2016.
heads.
Correct. Yeah, I think before the UK ambassador thing happened, I remember I was writing for the Star Ledger, and they didn't give a playoff mandate in 16. I remember my boss was on my ass about not making a bigger deal about it, and I was like, dude, it is a playoff man. Like unless things, again, that blew up, but that's their thing, is the Johnson brothers will not give a playoff mandate. They will not say we have to make the playoffs. What they will say is that we have very high expectations for this season. If we don't meet them, everyone's getting fired. That's what it is. I mean, Joe Douglas knows that if they don't make the playoffs, he's getting fired. Robert Saleh knows that if they don't make the playoffs, he's getting fired. These guys know that. It's not
Aaron Rodgers said it at the podium.
Yeah, it's not like Robert's not going to go 6-11 and be like, "You fired me?" No, he knows. Everyone knows it. So whether it's said publicly or not, I think is irrelevant. But it's absolutely the case.
Connor, thank you so much for hanging out with me for a little bit today. I really appreciate it. I hope to have you on again, maybe, during the preseason, right before the season starts, so we could talk about, some more expectations based on what we've seen actually on the field. Once again, guys, we're sponsored by SeatGeek. Use the code JetCast at checkout. You'll get $20 off your first purchase. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.